starting a Botox or fillers training and not quite sure if you should get started yet? Do you wonder if you have enough experience, or maybe even should you be on a special unit before you get into aesthetics? Well, today I'm going to answer that very common question that I get and also provide you with 3 tips that every single nurse or nurse practitioner who is considering getting into aesthetics should know. Tune in. So let's get into it. Before we get started, let me introduce myself. My name is Dr. Kiiyonna Jones, and I am owner and founder of Luxe Beauty and Wellness Boutique, as well as Luxe Beauty Academy. And I love all things nurses, nurse entrepreneurship. It's my goal to get every nurse who wants to leave employee status into entrepreneur status so they can leverage their licenses and own their worth. So I want to go ahead and get started today. This episode is sponsored by Luxe Beauty Academy. Luxe Beauty Academy is an online platform where they train nurses and nurse practitioners in the beauty and wellness space, help them start their businesses, and also, like I said, monetize their licenses that they have worked so hard for. So today I want to get started on 3 things every single nurse or healthcare professional who is thinking about entering into aesthetics. 3 things you should know before you get into it. As always, y'all know I got my notebook, and of course I have my laptop because your girl memory, the way it's set up, I'm gonna forget. So I have these things already here with me. So if you see me glancing down, it's because I'm trying to stay on track. But anyway, before we dive into the 3 things you must know before you start training in aesthetics, I wanna give you a little backstory on why is this even a topic? A lot of times people are confused because we know that we've heard the term aesthetic nurse, nurse injector, and we're like, okay, well, how do I be that? How do I become that? Of course it is training, but something that a lot of people don't understand is that just by virtue of you having a nursing license, or whether you're a nurse practitioner or a physician assistant, you are able to inject these products, right? Based on the definition of your scope of practice. Now, there are some states that are very specific and they say, you know what? Not every nurse can inject Botox or fillers. And so in certain states, very few, but in certain states, you may not be able to inject as a nurse. All nurse practitioners across all states can inject Botox fillers. And I say Botox, it's really neurotoxin, but most people know it as Botox, so I'll continue to refer to it that. Fillers, I'm referring to hyaluronic acid, but I'll continue to call it fillers. So all nurse practitioners can inject, period, across all states. But nurses, there are some states that say, no, you cannot. For example, Florida, you cannot. For example, Louisiana, you cannot inject hyaluronic acid. Alabama, you cannot for nurses. So I wanted to let you know that because there are some of these trainings that will allow you to take the training even though in your state you are not allowed to inject. And that is a travesty because there is a lot of misinformation where you think the only thing you need to do is train on the actual skill when that may not be the only thing you need, depending on if you have a job lined up or not, in which most cases, most people don't. So I want to start with a couple things. Training is a couple of days typically, okay, especially for your beginner's training. That's usually Botox and fillers. It usually includes a couple of treatments, of beginner level treatments. Botox is always the first thing. It's almost like the simplest. There can be some potential complications like swelling, redness, maybe allergic reaction. I have never read or heard of anyone having an allergic reaction to Botox, but I'm sure that it exists. So when you get to the part of the hyaluronic acid, that's where you increase your risk for complication. So that is something that is very concerning. So you want to make sure you get adequate training. But what I want people to know is a lot of times 2 days is simply not enough. Like, you feel like, okay, I learned this, but like, you need to really have a clear understanding of facial anatomy. You need to understand how to treat potential complications when it comes to fillers and Botox. Like, and that is not often, it's not enough time spent in training. So when you make the decision that you want to train, I want you to understand it's not a one-off. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, I took a weekend training, I'm ready. Because you still have a lot to learn, and there will be a lot more investment needed for you to feel comfortable, if you will, as an aesthetic injector. Another thing is hands-on experience. Not all trainings include hands-on experience. So when you are making a decision or you're considering if you're going to take a training, you want to find out, do they have hands-on experience? Because if you're just standing by watching, that your retention of that knowledge is going to diminish dramatically. So when you are trying to kind of deciding on where you should train, make sure they also have time for you to do hands-on training. And in some cases, they'll have you bring your own model, or you'll let them know in advance that you don't have your own model, and then they will have someone for you. Some trainings actually require you to have your own model. And so you need to think about that as well before we get into the right training. The next thing is, just like bedside, you guys, it's not a one and done. Like I said, you will definitely need to continue training. I promise you, after you're done with your very first training, your head is gonna be spinning like, okay, what did I just learn? And you need to not only study, but you also need to reinforce that with additional trainings. So now I'm gonna talk to you guys about the 3 types of training you can do, okay? So now that we know that nurses, RNs, non-advanced practice RNs is what I'm talking about, you may or may not be able to inject in your state. It's not very many states where you cannot, only a few, and the ones I know about are like Florida, Alabama, Arkansas, Louisiana. Those are the ones that I know about. So I would definitely check before you do your training to make sure that you are able to inject as a registered nurse, okay? I wanna add that. As far as nurse practitioners, across all states you can inject, and so that's not a problem. There's no state at this point that only allows physicians to inject Botox and fillers. All right, so there's 3 types of training that I'm gonna focus on here. There are definitely kind of variations of them all, but I wanna focus on 3. A lot of people don't know about this first one that I'm going to talk to you about, and this one is private training. Believe it or not, wherever you are in your area, you can actually find a training that is from a local med spa or aesthetic business in your area. I know it's easy to go online and go on Google and find a training institute in your area, but private trainings are often slept on, and they are like the stepchild, but they are gold. And let me tell you why. Because if you do a private training, you have the ability to have a more intimate learning experience. Most often, private trainings include hands-on, but I would definitely ask to confirm, and you can bring a model to do like demonstration. I love private trainings, and I have done them before, because you get to ask a lot of questions, and the questions are not just structured like only what the curriculum is for that day, but rather it's usually more intimate, a couple of people, and then the owner, you can ask them questions. If you decide you want to start a business, or if you just want to ask them like what their journey was like you get a lot of hand-holding and more intimate experience. And in that case, it also allows you to make connections and network with the actual business in your area. So let's just say if you have no experience and then you're going to them and you're paying them for training, you can ask them like, do you know of anyone who is looking for an injector? Or, I want to intern somewhere. Do you have any ideas? Or, I don't have any experience. Where do you think that I should start? Because I want to be an injector. You can really get granular and ask a lot of questions that could help you get to the next level as far as your journey of becoming an aesthetic nurse. A lot of times people sleep on private trainings, but I can tell you, if you go on Google and type in med spa in my area or med spa near me or aesthetic near me and call and ask these different businesses if they have any type of training or can refer you to one, I guarantee you will find some private trainings. Another benefit for private trainings is that they are not usually as expensive as the larger ones. Makes sense because they don't have such a large overhead. So they are not as expensive as these larger companies out there. And again, like I said, that intimate connection, if you're somebody like me who like needs a little hand holding, and also someone who I can like ask questions to, it is an amazing experience. And I strongly, strongly, strongly recommend it if you feel like you can find value in a small, intimate setting. All right, so private training is the first one that I would look into if those are your qualities. Other than that, we have more. There's 2 more left. The next one is, I consider this one like a comprehensive training. It's where they have didactic as well, and didactic, I mean like theory, right? They spend a lot of time like lecturing. They have PowerPoints and presentations, and they give you, handouts, and you get workbooks and all that. And then in addition to that, they may have a hands-on portion. So if you are going to, and these are usually larger training institutions, like National Laser Institute, Empire Medical Training, Skin Essence, Skin Aesthetics is another one. So there's a lot of larger ones out there. Now these larger ones is the ones I call comprehensive. They actually go all over the United States in larger metropolitan areas, of course, and they train. And so they usually have master nurse injectors with them, physicians, and they go all over and they train, and they're not really exclusive to an actual product, but they will have certain products there, meaning like the neurotoxin. Maybe they may have Botox or Dysport or Xeomin, like it just depends. So they'll have their training, they'll do their didactic portion, they'll do the model, and that's usually the other half of the day. Now, the thing about these more comprehensive trainings is they usually train on multiple treatments, okay? So I remember my first one was Botox and then lips, right? So, or you could choose. I chose lips, but you could choose either for filler, you could choose lips, or you could choose cheeks, or I think you could choose, not chin, it was either you could do cheek or lips for your fillers. But it was like a Botox and fillers training, and the first day was completely didactic. The second day was a little bit of didactic and training. Generally speaking, same thing with comprehensive as is with the private training. They usually only do, if you're inexperienced and have never done any aesthetics, they'll usually start you with Botox and a basic, and it's not basic when it's filler because things could go wrong no matter what, even in the lip, but in areas that are more or less complicated, I should say. And they focus on label and not off label, and for the most part. These are generally less expensive than the private trainings. Well, depends on which one you select. If you select a package that does not require, where you do not get the hands-on, it's sometimes a little less, but if you want hands-on, then it can be a little more than private. So I would definitely be on the lookout for which one would work best for you. But what I like about comprehensive is it's more structured. It's like they already have their curriculum, they have the presenters, they already have vendors who come in. Like, it's really laid out and structured. With private, there's a lot more flexibility, which could be good because in private, sometimes in a private training, they'll go by the needs of those who are attending the training, versus the comprehensive is like, it doesn't matter where you go, anywhere USA where they have these trainings, it's gonna be the same type of curriculum. So structure is good, it's nothing wrong with that. Also, a benefit of going to like a more larger comprehensive training is networking as well, because now there is a lot more people in these trainings. There's a lot of physicians, there's a lot of nurses, nurse practitioner, and if you find one in your area, most likely they are working in your area, so you can do a lot of networking. You might even find a doctor who is starting his practice, or who actually owns a practice and maybe looking for some volunteers volunteers or someone he's gonna hire. Like there's a lot of networking that happened in those places as well. So that's another benefit in it. Price wise, like I said, it may be a little bit expensive if you decide you're going to do model, but you want to make sure they spend some time on the didactic, and the didactic covers like the facial anatomy, also the hands-on part. Sometimes hands-on could mean like doing one site injection of Botox, and I'm telling you, these comprehensive training programs are notorious for this. They'll be like, oh yeah, well you can do like 2 injections, and it's like, that's not enough for me to like be trained and feel comfortable to go out here and start doing it on my own. So I would be mindful of that. Make sure you ask the right questions. How many instructors per student? Because I trained one time, although this was sclerotherapy, so it wasn't that bad, but it was like 7 of us for one instructor. There's no way that instructor could watch all of us do it. And then it was like we had different models, and so we had to wait until that instructor was done with that one table, and then we could start injecting at the other table. It just wasn't the best experience. So I would definitely find out and ask them what their ratio is for their instructor to their trainees if I decided to do a comprehensive. In a private, generally speaking, it's small, so you don't have to ask. But I mean, you can still ask them, but generally speaking, it's small. The next thing is, and a lot of people do not know this, when you set up, if you decide to become an entrepreneur, when you set up your account with the pharmaceutical companies like Allergan, Galderma, Merz, they typically have trainings as well. Now let me caution you, you have to have some training already. Like they're not training you from scratch. The benefit for them is that if you know more and you are a better practitioner, then you're gonna purchase more products for them. So all of them generally have their own, believe it or not, their own training program, whether it's online, and then all of the reps have a budget for in-person training. And I've trained a lot of times on like more advanced techniques, PDO, facial balancing, just all kind of different types of training, and it was free. And it was by master trainers. So your rep has a budget. When you if you decide you wanna like own your own spa, your rep has a budget and they can get you in on the trainings. Now let me tell you, you have to have, of course, already trained, but if I had known this before, I would have definitely still done my training, but I would not have trained as much. Like I spent thousands and thousands of dollars investing in training, and I wouldn't have spent as much as I did had I known that once I set my pharmaceutical aesthetic accounts essentially up, that I would have had access to their training, their online training, and also to network. Oh my gosh, so many of the different companies that will come to your location will have events, you know, for the products, if you decide to get lasers, all kind of training. Generally speaking, it's not at the beginner level though. So you have to make sure that you have had some type of training. And this does not matter if you have a smaller location. It does not matter if you're just in a suite or you have a medical room and that's where you're doing your treatments. It doesn't matter. You still can get the training from any of these companies that you have your account set up with. So those are essentially the 3 types of training. Of course, I strongly recommend if you are just now like thinking about becoming an aesthetic nurse, decide on either a private or a more comprehensive based on your learning style. Make sure you ask the right questions. You want to know what the class size is. You want to know how much time is spent on didactic. You want to know if they provide you with policies and protocols, because that is also important. So you can study if you want to work as an aesthetic nurse versus if you want to own your own aesthetics practice. It's going to be very helpful because you need to have these in place. So I would consider in the outset, like when you first make the decision, am I doing this to become an owner or am I doing this to become an injector? If you're doing it to become an injector and you want to make yourself more marketable to a potential med spa or aesthetic biz that you want to work at, go do the training, network with some people. I would definitely try to see if I can find my way to like certain events where they are, so that I could potentially either work for a company, or maybe they have some type of internship or something like that. So I'd have that in mind. And when they do, and a lot of places will do that, it does require you to do a lot of searching. It's not gonna just land in your lap, and a lot of people give up very easily, which I strongly don't recommend doing that if you know that this is something you really wanna do. But when you make that decision, okay, I'm looking to work at a spa, then you know when you're going to do your training, you have that mindset, like it's networking, it's learning the new skill, like who can I get to know, right? Versus if you feel like you wanna own, then you know, okay, I'm getting this training so that I can get the skill, but also I want to make sure that I can get the protocols and policies and procedures and possibly network with other aesthetic business owners or med spa owners in my area, right? And then maybe your next step would be private, right? Because then if you get to network with someone who has their own spa and it's private, and then they do private training, then you can ask more business related questions as well. So it's all about strategy, you guys. Again, if you find yourself getting stuck, just make sure you think about the end. Like, what is that your overall goal is before you actually make the decision to invest in this type of training, because it is an investment and you want to optimize your dollars. So if you found value in this video, if you find that it was informative, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, share a friend. As always, this channel, you guys, is my goal is to make sure it's jam-packed with value and help other nurses, nurse practitioners, and healthcare professionals make informed decisions as they navigate this nurse boss industry. All right, you guys, until next time, take care, bye.